Viewer discretion is advised. The people in this story are not characters. They are real. They had ordinary lives before the night everything changed, and they have carried what happened to them every single day since. Some stopped going outside after dark. Some relocated entirely. New state, new town, new life, as if distance could put enough space between them and what they saw. Others have never spoken about it again. Not once. Not a single word to anyone who knew them. We are not going to tell you what to believe. We are going to show you the evidence. And when we are done, you are going to have a very hard time explaining it away. There is one more thing you need to know before we start. The creature in this story follows a pattern. It comes back every 10 years, in years that end in 7. It has done this since 1887. Without fail, without missing a single cycle. 2027 is almost here. Keep that in mind. He was not out there looking for a monster. He was just camping. Same woods he had camped in a dozen times before. Same fire. Same dark sky showing through the tops of the trees. He knew this place. He trusted it. That is what made it so much worse. Because the moment the woods went completely quiet, not gradually, not slowly, but all at once, like someone cut a wire, he understood that whatever caused that silence was not something he had ever encountered before. He looked up from the fire. It was already there, standing at the tree line, 20 yards away, 7 feet tall, upright on 2 legs, covered in dark fur with the head of a dog mounted on the shoulders of something built like a man. Its eyes caught the firelight, amber, burning, locked onto him. It did not rush him. It did not move at all. It simply stood there and looked at him the way a predator looks at something it has already made a decision about. This is the Michigan Dogman. This is 1937, and this is only the beginning. Northern Michigan, summer of 1937. The forests in northern Michigan are not like the woods most people picture when they close their eyes. These are old trees, tall, dark, and packed so tight that even in the middle of the day, the light on the ground looks like dusk. By midnight, the darkness between those trunks is the kind of dark you can feel pressing against your skin. Robert Fortney, who was a teenager at this time, had camped here before. He knew these woods. That matters because it means what happened to him cannot be explained away as fear of the unfamiliar. He was not a nervous person in a strange place. This was a place he had trusted, a place he had chosen. He built his fire and settled in for the night. The first thing he noticed was the quietness. Not the good kind, not the peaceful kind you drive 4 hours into the wilderness to find. This was something else, the wrong kind of quiet, the kind that told him every living thing in those woods had gone completely still, all at once, for a reason. No owls, no bugs, no wind through the pine needles. Nothing. Like the forest had drawn a breath and was holding it. He said later that his body understood before his brain did. A weight on his chest that had no reason to be there. A pressure behind his eyes. Some old buried part of him already sending a signal he didn't have words for yet. Then came the breathing, slow, heavy, close. He turned toward the tree line, and there it was. Standing right at the edge of the dark, where his firelight just barely reached. 7 feet tall, upright, still. Its dark fur absorbed the light around it. Its head was shaped like a dog's. A German shepherd's, but massive, set on shoulders squared like a man's. And it was watching him with an absolute stillness that was worse than any movement could have been. He could not move. His legs stopped working. Not by choice. His body made the decision before he could. Some ancient part of him that was older than thought understood exactly what he was looking at and exactly what the rules were. Stay still. Do not run. Do not make a sound. Then it growled. He spent years trying to describe that sound and never quite managed. It did not come from the creature's throat. It came up from the ground beneath his feet. He felt it in his chest, in the roots of his teeth. A sound that was not just heard but absorbed, like the air itself had changed frequency. And then, slow and unhurried, as though he was not worth any more of its time, it turned and walked back into the trees. He did not sleep. He did not move from that fire until the sun came up. When there was finally enough light to see by, he looked at the ground around his campsite. There were footprints. They started at the tree line and came toward him. and they stopped 15 feet from where he had been sitting. 15 feet. While he sat at his fire watching it stand at the tree line, while he believed he had 20 yards of distance between himself and the thing, it had already come closer. Already moved through the dark without a sound and stood 15 feet from him and growled. He had never heard it move at all. Robert Fortney kept that story buried for 50 years. When he finally spoke in 1987, he became the first. But the moment that phone call aired, it became clear he was nowhere near the last. April 1st, 1987. April Fool's Day. A disc jockey named Steve Cook at radio station WTCM in Traverse City, Michigan, wrote a song as a joke. He called it The Legend. The song described a creature stalking the forests of northern Michigan, dog-like, walking upright, with glowing eyes, and claimed it returned every 10 years in years ending in 7. He invented the 10-year cycle himself. He thought it was clever. He played it on the air and waited for people to laugh. The phone started ringing before the song was finished. Not people laughing, not people playing along. People calling to say they had already seen it. Robert Fortney called. The same Robert Fortney from 1937. Now an old man, 50 years removed from the day something rose up on 2 legs at the Muskegon River and looked at him. He had never told anyone. Not one person in 50 years. And when he heard that song on the radio, he picked up the phone, and for the first time in half a century, he told someone what he saw. His voice, according to the station staff, was shaking. A woman called and said her father had seen something in the woods in 1957. He came home pale and silent and never returned to that part of the forest. He took what he saw to his grave without another word. A truck driver called. He could barely finish his sentences. The calls kept coming for days, for weeks. Reports not just from 1937, but stretching back across decades. People who had been holding what they saw in silence for years, sometimes for their entire lives because they had no proof, no witnesses, and no way to make anyone believe them. Steve Cook had written a fiction, and without knowing it, he had accidentally written a history. These people had never spoken to each other. There was no internet, no forums. Most of them had never told a single person what they saw. They were calling a radio station alone in the dark, carrying a story they had held in silence for years. And they were all describing the same thing, the same height, the same fur, the same amber eyes, the same way it moved. A prank does not do that. A shared delusion does not do that. Only something real does that. Let's treat this like a case file, because when you put every account side by side, from 1887 all the way through the flood of calls that followed Cook's song, a pattern forms that is very hard to look away from. Height 6 to 7 feet every time, without exception. Posture fully upright. Walking on 2 legs the way a person walks, but with the ease of something built for it. Not struggling, not unsteady, completely natural, like it has never moved any other way. The head, canine. Always described as a large dog's face, most often compared to a German shepherd, mounted on a body shaped like a man's. Wide shoulders, long arms, dark fur covering everything. The eyes amber, yellow, reflective. Every single witness, without being asked, comes back to the eyes. They catch light the way an animal's eyes do. Except witnesses report seeing that glow even when there is no light source anywhere near them. The behavior, it watches, it does not attack. It holds its ground. It growls, it stares, and then it leaves, on its own terms, when it decides to. Not when it is frightened off, not when someone moves or makes noise. When it chooses. And before any of that, before the first witness sees anything at all, the forest goes quiet. This detail appears in account after account from people who never spoke to each other across more than a century of time. Every bird, every insect, every rustling branch, all of it stopping together instantly without warning. And the dogs always know first. In every account where a dog was present, the animal felt it before the person did. Not barking, not growling, just frozen, staring in one direction, refusing to move. Some of those dogs refused to return to those locations for days. One witness said his hunting dog, a dog that had never once refused to enter cover in 12 years, Sat down at the edge of those woods and would not take a single step forward no matter what he did. Dogs have survived alongside humans for thousands of years, partly because they sense things we cannot. When every dog in every account, across every decade, responds not with aggression, but with the silent and total terror of something that knows it is completely outmatched, that means something. These are people from different years, different towns, different lives, no way to share details. Most of them too afraid to tell anyone at all, describing the same creature, down to the color of its eyes, for over 100 years. Here is the rational explanation. You deserve to hear it. The human brain is hardwired to find faces in the dark. It is built to detect upright shapes because, for most of human history, an upright shape in the dark meant a predator, a rival, something dangerous. When you are alone in a forest at night, under enough stress, your brain can generate threats. It can fill in details. It can show you something that isn't there. This is a real documented phenomenon. In a single isolated case, it would be a perfectly reasonable explanation. But a hallucination does not give 100 different people in 100 different years the same height, the same eye color, the same behavior, the same environmental detail. That sudden, total silence, appearing every single time, before any of them see anything at all. A stressed response does not train the dogs. And if this is folklore contamination, if people are simply repeating a story they absorb from the culture around them, why are witnesses who have never heard the term dogman describing the same anatomy? Why do people call that station who had never told a single soul what they saw, carrying a description that matched accounts they had never read? And it does not explain the accounts where multiple witnesses were together, seeing the same thing at the same moment, agreeing on the details in real time, before any outside source could have influenced them. But the deepest problem with the rational explanation is simpler than all of that. Ask any of these witnesses what scared them most. Not the size, though the size is impossible. Not the sound, though the sound stays with them for the rest of their lives. Not the impossibility of it, standing there in a world where it should not exist. They say the eyes, because the eyes did not look empty. They did not look like an animal seeing you. They looked like something was home behind them. Something that looked at you and understood exactly what you were and had already decided what to do about you. You do not hallucinate that level of specific, consistent, deeply personal recognition. You feel it because something real is looking back. You already know what Robert Fortney found at his campsite. The prints that stopped 15 feet from where he sat. The growl that came up through the earth. He was not the only one. Second account, a logger, driving home alone on a back road south of Cadillac, Michigan. Late fall of 1987. The kind of road with no name, just a number, trees so close on both sides that your headlights only reach 30 feet before the dark takes everything back. He had driven it 100 times. He knew every bend. His truck died, not slowly, not with warning. One moment it was running, the next, nothing. Engine off, headlights out, all of it at once. He was sitting in complete darkness on an empty road in the middle of nowhere, with no way to call anyone and no reason to expect another car. He tried the ignition. Nothing happened. And then something crossed the road in front of him. It walked. It did not run. It did not rush. It moved across that road the way you move through your own house in the dark, unhurried, unbothered, like the space belonged to it. His headlights were dead. There were no streetlights anywhere on that road. He has never been able to explain how he saw it, but he saw it because its eyes were lit from within. That amber color. 2 points of light moving through absolute darkness. It reached the other side of the road, and it stopped, and it turned its head and looked at him through the windshield. He described the next 40 seconds as the longest of his life. He could not move, could not look away. He sat in his dead truck while something 7 feet tall stood on the shoulder of the road and looked at him with those amber eyes and decided something about him. After 40 seconds, it turned and walked into the trees. His truck started on its own 30 seconds later. He drove home without stopping. He asked his wife to start making that drive when he needed to go that direction. He told her there was something wrong with the road. He did not tell her what. Third account. a 15-year-old girl and her 13-year-old brother, Wexford County, the summer of 1987. They were cutting through the woods behind their neighborhood on a trail they had walked their entire lives. The path was so familiar it had become invisible to them. They were arguing the way siblings do, not paying attention to the forest around them. They both went quiet at the same moment, because the woods went quiet first. She described it this way. 1 second there were crickets, wind in the leaves, the full sound of a summer evening in the trees. And then all of it stopped. Not faded, stopped. The way sound stops when a hand closes over your mouth. Then came the smell. She said it hit her like something solid. Wet fur, thick, heavy. The way a wet dog smells, but amplified into something that filled her whole chest. And underneath it, something older. Something that made the back of her throat close up. Something that did not belong in the same world as her. Her brother grabbed her hand. Not the way you grab someone when you are scared. The way you grab someone when there is only one thing left to do, and you need them to do it right now. He had already seen it. He said nothing. He ran and he pulled her with him, and she ran without looking back because something in her understood, without being told, that looking back was not something she wanted to do. She heard it behind them, not chasing, not closing the distance, just making that sound, low, resonant, rolling up from the ground. The way something makes a sound when it wants you to understand the difference between being chased and being allowed to leave. They made it home. Her brother sat on the kitchen floor and did not speak for 2 hours. Years later, when she finally agreed to talk about it, she said this: "I was glad I didn't see it, because my brother saw it and he was never the same after that night. There are things that get into you and don't come back out. I think that thing knows that. I think that's why it let us go. I think it lets most people go on purpose. I think it wants to be known." She said that like it was a warning. If you have made it this far, if you are still here after everything these people went through, type the word Wexford in the comments, because that's where it all began. When people hear this description for the first time, the mind reaches for something familiar: werewolves, shapeshifters, a human being who transforms into a monster under the full moon and turns back at sunrise. Let go of that. In over 130 years of documented Dogman accounts, not one witness has ever described a transformation. Not one person has ever seen a human being change into this creature. It is not a person who turns into a monster. It is the monster, only the monster. The way it has always been. Werewolf stories are bearable in a specific way. They have rules: silver, moonlight, dawn. There is a curse that can theoretically be broken. There is a person inside that you might, in some version of the story, reach. The Dogman has none of that. No rules, no weakness that has ever appeared in any account. In every single report, it leaves when it chooses to leave, on its own schedule, for its own reasons. No one has ever driven it off. No one has ever made it retreat. It simply decides when it is done, and then it goes. And here's the question that sits at the center of all of this and will not go away. Something this large has been moving through the forests of Michigan for over 100 years. Hundreds of people have seen it up close. It leaves footprints. Multiple witnesses have seen it together, at the same time, in the same location. And there is nobody, no physical evidence that has ever held up under scrutiny. No remains, no trail camera image that survives examination. How does something 7 feet tall, seen by hundreds of people across more than a century, leave absolutely nothing behind? How does it stay this hidden for this long while also being this present? Unless hiding is not something it has to try to do. Unless the only reason we know about it at all is because it wants us to. The Michigan case is the most documented, the most famous. It has a name, a timeline. A radio disc jockey who accidentally proved 100 years of whispered history was real. But if you think this ends at the Michigan state line, you are not seeing the full picture. In Walworth County, Wisconsin, there is a stretch of road called Bray Road. Since the 1980s, people have been reporting something on and around that road that matches the Michigan accounts with a precision that is deeply uncomfortable. Same height, same dark fur, same amber eyes, same upright walk, same way of watching without closing the distance. The locals call it the Beast of Bray Road. Different name, same description, same specific lasting dread in the eyes of the people who have seen it. In rural Kentucky, in the forested hills where roads go long stretches without a house or a light, there are accounts that stretch back further than anyone has properly documented. Older witnesses, older stories. People who had never heard of Michigan or Bray Road describing the same creature in the same terms. In Ohio, in the river valleys where the trees grow thick along the water, the reports have been quietly stacking up for decades. Hunters, hikers, people driving home alone at night on roads just like the one that logger drove in Cadillac. Different states, different decades, different people with no connection to each other. All describing something that walks on two legs, watches without attacking, has amber eyes that hold light they should not hold, and disappears without leaving anything behind. Each one of those places has its own darkness, its own history, its own witnesses who have been sitting with what they know. Steve Cook will tell you he invented that pattern. He has said it many times. He came up with the 10-year cycle as part of a joke, and he has never stopped being surprised that anyone took it seriously. But the sightings existed before his song. The old man who called the station in 1987, the one whose voice was shaking, the one who had told no one for 20 years. He saw something in 1967. 1967 is a year ending in 7. He did not know about the pattern. He had never heard the song. He just knew what he saw. Every year the cycle names, every single one. Reports surface. Witnesses come forward. People who had no knowledge of the pattern and no reason to know what year it was supposed to happen find themselves standing in the dark with something that should not exist. 2027 is almost here, and if the pattern holds, and it has held across nearly 150 years without a single miss, then someone is going to be in those Michigan woods when the forest goes quiet. Their dog is going to freeze. They are going to smell something wrong in the air. And they are going to look up from whatever they are doing, and something is going to already be looking back at them. Patient, still, with those amber eyes that hold light they should not hold. If every one of these accounts is a lie, why do they all tell the same lie? Across more than a century, without comparing notes, from people who had every reason to stay quiet and nothing to gain from speaking? If it is all hallucination, why does the hallucination have amber eyes every single time? Why does the forest always go silent first? Why do the dogs always know before the people do? And why, when you sit down with these witnesses, when you earn their trust and push past the surface of what they are willing to say, do none of them point to the size as the worst part? None of them say the sound. None of them say the impossibility of it standing there. They say the eyes. Every time. Without being asked. Because the eyes did not look like an animal's eyes. There was something behind them, something aware, something that looked at them and processed exactly what they were and made a choice about them. Most of the people in these accounts were allowed to leave. Most of them. The Michigan Dogman, 1937, case still open. 2027 is almost here. If the pattern holds, we'll be here when it does. Subscribe to The Silent Scream if you want to see what happens next.